Hi, this is Joe Wood, and I am doing my assignment for demographics for Winfield High School for my Fort Hays State course. Um, and I apologize. It's for Miss Stewart. I've been homesick all week, and my internet doesn't seem to be working, so I made my way to my classroom, even though I'm not feeling super great. And I'm wearing a hat because I haven't taken a shower in a couple days, so my hair looks awful. So there's some TMI for you, but we're going to get this done so that way we can rock and roll through class. School and community, for Winfield, Kansas. I'll talk a little bit more about Winfield, I think, on the next slide. Um, but our community demographics are in pretty close alignment with our school demographics when it comes to um, ethnicity. And so African American, I think, but what I do think is kind of interesting as you look at these numbers, right? So obviously we're in small town white America, um, but what I think is kind of interesting, and I thought it was odd that our Hispanic population, I think, depending on the studies that you look at, I struggled to find the actual community demographics on the Kansas State Department of Education website, and so I kind of pulled from some various different sources and kind of averaged some of them together. Um, but the Hispanic, and the way they collect data, Hispanic can kind of vary from study to study. And what I thought was interesting in the school demographics, which I feel like is more accurate, rather, because our Hispanic population isn't that strong. We actually have a neighboring community that has a very strong one. And so I think a lot of times if Hispanics are moving to the area, they'll pick Arc City over Winfield because of that tie and that connection. Whereas our ethnicity that seems to have a stronger hold is Asian. We have I grew up, I'm from Winfield. I played soccer in high school, and probably a good third of the soccer team was Laotian. And so around here, it's Laos for short. But I would say that that's kind of our unique demographic being in small town, kind of white America, is that we don't really have much in the way of African American population or Hispanic population, but the ethnicity that I think, if you were to break down the other ethnicities, I think you would probably find that that's our biggest ethnicity, which I would say would make us kind of systematically unique. We also have quite a bit. I have a number of students that are from Malaysia, and so and I don't know if that's just kind of a depending on the families that are here, and a couple of them go to my church as well. And so or not, I see them at church here and there, and they're related to most, because my kids go to the Catholic school here in town, and so I've kind of made connections as a second during my first year as a teacher with if they knew AR, or sorry, I'm not supposed to say names, um, know that student, and so I'm kind of making connections. Um, but the one thing that I was kind of surprised about as I went through this is that the socioeconomic status of our community is lower than what I expected. With the mean income of 24,000 for like a single income, and then a household income is roughly right at double that. So it tells me that most of our households have two incomes coming in, and neither one of those incomes is necessarily very high. And obviously, the student demographic that I'm age range wise is 9th through 12th, age 14 to 18 years old. And I kind of wrote this up. This is actually something I pulled from another assignment that I had done for a different class for Fort Hays State. But I feel like Winfield is it's a small town. It's a good mix of blue collar and white collar. Obviously, there's always going to be, in that kind of scenario, there's going to be more blue collar. We have a lot of blue collar factory manufacturing, plastic blow molding, those kinds of things here in town. Um, I would say that Winfield is a safer community. It's a really supportive community. There's a number of things that happen here that they've tried to happen in other communities and haven't been as successful. So I've always felt like Winfield does a really good job of kind of coming together um, and working together as a town and as a community to support each other. Student academic standards. I highlighted the ones in red that were below the standard. Obviously, we're below the standard on all level fours. For some reason, when I clicked on the social studies, it wasn't pulling up anything. And so I apologize for not having that information that was requested on the assignment. But it does seem like we have this tendency to be below the standard in level one, but my assumption is, I mean, we're above the standard in level two, so that means the problem is I'm guessing that you know, our level, the kids that should be at level three and four aren't where they need to be, and so we have this larger pool in the second level. I also think one of the big struggles, and I'm sure it's a struggle everywhere, is that we just have trouble getting our kids to take this test seriously, especially post COVID. And I just really struggle, and it really kind of irritates me personally because I'm one of those people that's intrinsically motivated to do things and to want to do it at my best. And a lot of these kids are just more worried about getting through the test than actually getting a relative score to what they're actually capable of. Educational options that we have. And so educational placement, I feel like a lot of our students, increasingly number, are going more towards like the technical college and skills trade. Um, but our demographic, our ACT scores, over the last 5 years is, 20 to 21. It's like 19.6 or 8 right now, but it's lower all around the state. I kind of noticed that from a state trend. We're either at or just below the state average. And graduation rate, I would say that's an area we fall a little bit further below the state average in the 85 to 90 range. We did have a big jump during the COVID time, but I think the COVID time is really kind of, it's hard to assess. Um, our dropout rate is between 2 and 3%, which again is a little higher than the state average. Learning accommodations that we have. One of my good friends is the head of the SPED program here, so we have all kind. I mean, we have customized, personalized IEPs and learning accommodations for all of our kids. I mean, not all of our kids, but anybody who's been identified and gone through the process and whatnot. And so we have a number of different accommodations and testing accommodations. It's all communicated through our Power School, which is a really great resource. And so our SPED program's been really helpful in helping me adjust as a new teacher. Um, my kind of reflection on this assignment is I feel like we definitely have a unique, diverse demographic. Like I said before, I feel like having that stronger Asian ethnicity in comparison to a lot of others. I feel like socioeconomic status is lower than what I kind of expected. I I feel that the learning accommodations that we have at Winfield High School kind of surpassed my initial expectations, and I feel like our state testing results are an area where we need to improve. Um, but I feel like I need to relate this a little bit to some of the other content from the assignment. But I definitely liked the spaghetti discussion, and I think that from a reflection standpoint, sorry, I'm going over my 8 minutes, but I feel like that's a really unique. I really liked that, and actually going back to spaghetti, it actually reminded me when I went to Italy and I was there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like this spaghetti at all. Like, because it was really runny and thin. I just really thought it was really funny. I was like, my favorite spaghetti is the spaghetti that my mom makes, and it's because of where I come from. I come from the heart of Kansas where beef, it's what's for dinner, so I like my really meaty, thick spaghetti sauce. And I just think it's interesting how, and I think it really bodes well for this idea of choice. I'm a really big fan of more, not, oh, we're not a project-based learning school district or school setup, but I like project-based learning, and I really like the ability to give them choice in their project-based learning. But it also kind of made me think a little bit about, are they even picking the right choice, right? Do they even know what they want? And so, I don't know, just kind of gave me some things to think about moving forward. So, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of your